Before we get started today, I wanted to direct your attention to d2cplus.co, where we have $1 trials for our private membership community, where you're going to get access to all of our amazing workshops and challenges like the Influencer Flywheel Challenge, the Automation Challenge, and the Standout with Snapchat, our Snapchat challenge that we just finished recording. You'll get a full course library. You'll get access to our private group. You'll get access to these podcasts when they are recorded, where you can ask questions live. You're going to want to join d2cplus.co, and you can do it right now for $1. So you should go there right now, d2cplus.co, join for $1 only, and get all of that awesome D2C goodness. Hello and welcome to the D2C podcast. I am Eric Dick, along with co-host Kyle Guilfoyle. And today we are really lucky to have Demetrius Charlemagne, the co-founder of Avec Drinks, which is a D2C beverage company based in New York with the mission of helping people never compromise their spirit. They provide high flavor, low sugar mixers. And Demetrius is specifically focused, or D, as I think we will be calling you with the rest of the podcast, is focused on the marketing side of growing Avec Drinks. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing, D?
I'm doing great. Very excited to be here and to chat all things 6-month-old D2C brand.
Very cool. So why don't you give us the story of your D2C brand, sort of give us the hero's journey of how Avec Drinks came to be, and talk about your role in its growth.
Yeah, so I met my co-founder Alex at business school on the very first day of business school. He is British, came over with the idea after seeing, the rise of the likes of, tonic water in the UK and just the drinking culture abroad, and, the sort of global flavor and different understanding of beverage that exists in the rest of the world. But also, as, we both sort of looked at food and beverage, just seeing all the changes, people moving from dairy to oat milk, or, sweet green instead of like nasty deli salads, or like just the explosion of, better for you choices across basically every category. He noticed that one thing was left behind, and that was the mixer category, right? So the same things that your dad was probably mixing with his spirits, you're mixing with your spirits today. And there were sort of three trends at play. One was that health trend, like I talked about. So, people going to the bar, including myself, being like, can I have a tequila soda with a splash of something to like make it kind of taste good, to like hack their way to this like healthy drink at the bar. Then you had, premium spirits back with nightclubs. Everyone can remember those times. You would be buying this beautiful, expensive bottle of spirits and then pairing it with like orange juice, cranberry juice, Red Bull, if you were super premium, and soda water. And then thirdly was this world of, low ABV, no ABV, and sort of the tension that was happening between like people who drink or people who don't drink, and sort of like the judgment that was happening there.
Those are non-alcoholic beverages, you mean?
And really just believing in a world where non-alcoholic or low alcohol beverages, basically. Mm-hmm. So, there being some move towards that, but also some judgment around people who still enjoyed their spirits. Like, why isn't there a world where, we all can sort of drink together? And so Alex and I really believed in this mission of drink better, which is, the world is better when we sort of like locally connect, people drink together, whether that's with spirits or without, have conversations, experience new things. And so we started building the brand from there.
I love
it. I'm really curious.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm really curious because I imagine part of the discipline in coming up with the concept is, really specifying that it's something to be mixed with, as opposed to like I don't know how to say it, La Croix, which is like just a a flavored soda. You can it's kind of for everyone, and it's an insanely popular product. Why not do something similar where it's it's a flavored soda? You really seem to go out of your way to specify that it's a mixer, which I think is interesting, and I'd love to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, so we were not interested in the seltzer water category. There are plenty of players in that space. We particularly saw a need, behind the bar, at the home bar cart, and in that occasion. And really, like LaCroix, Spindrift, great brands, things that we love, but still a way that you're sort of hacking to a good drink if you're pairing it with vodka or tequila or whatever. It's not made to be mixed. You don't want to be drinking the same thing that you're drinking at lunch with that sort of special occasion drink. And also, the formula is different. So another thing to mention is when we started, this was before, White Claw and Truly and all these big seltzer brands, whatever you guys have in Canada, appeared, and people, bartenders, especially, and industry people were like, people don't think about health when they drink. It's not important to them. You guys are crazy. A, you're not going to be able to get a formula like this, and B, no one's going to care because, you know, drinking is a vice and people don't care about health when they're having this vice. And then White Claw happened, and that sort of changed that conversation entirely. And so, you know, that sort of took it off the table. And then, you know, really Alex coming together, you know, making at-home recipes. You know, we did that for 6 months before we went to a formulator to try and get, you know, how can we make this with real juice, natural ingredients, no nasties, no natural flavor, you know, which LaCroix has, and make it pair with spirits. And so there were some compromises, right? We're not like 0 sugar across the board. Like we added agave to certain, you know, to our ginger and jalapeno product because, you know, it tastes better when you mix that with a tequila or with a whiskey. And so we're really made to be mixed with spirits or drunk. You know, some people, including myself, who's a lover of spirits, but I'll have an Avec on its own, and that feels like I'm having a drink, and it's sort of a special occasion. So that was sort of how we thought about our positioning. And then each of our flavors goes after like an existing mixer. So the way we thought about product development was, you know, instead of like a ginger beer, which is like one of the best selling things, you know, for mixers, our ginger product has like 90% less sugar, but competes on taste there instead of, you know, cranberry juice, which I, you know, as a woman on the podcast can say reminds me of UTIs and things like that. You know, our hibiscus pomegranate has interesting flavors, real juice, and sort of like mimics a little bit of that, you know, cranberry feel, but is totally different in terms of like the kind of flavor it's adding, and drastically, again, cuts down that sugar and calorie count.
This is a part of the market I've just followed really closely. Like there's so many good reasons why this like low sugar you know, thing is good. I keep thinking my wife buys a lot of apple cider, and she switched to apple cider seltzers. And I think what a coup this is for apple cider makers that they can just inject water or fizz, and they have to actually produce half the product they might normally have to put out there, you know, and the rest of it's just air. And I'm like, that's what a great thing. I think back to the shampoo companies that just added the word like wash, rinse, repeat. They added repeat, and they like, you know, what 30% of their sales or whatever. So yeah, is that something that goes like, I guess you're obviously dealing with some premium ingredients, I would imagine, though. So you probably don't save a lot on that.
Yeah, we're not saving on ingredients. We could have made a lot of cheap choices, right? So we chose to be in cans instead of bottles, which would have been cheaper for a small production line. We could have not used real juice, which would have been way cheaper in terms of, you know, the storage and transport and all of that kind of stuff. And we really have an ambition, you know, Sweetgreen is, you know, one of our brand spirit animals, but an ambition to work with, you know, as closely with our supply chain as possible. So we know, for example, where our yuzus are coming from or our lemons are coming from at certain points of the year. So yeah, we're not skimping on ingredients for sure. There are definitely cheaper ways to do it. I wish we could just add water, but it's funny you say apples because, you know, an apple farmer was one of, you know, an apple farmer in New York approached us and was like, you know, we have apple juice. You have this, a great idea. Let's do something together. And so we're even thinking about partnerships there with new flavors as we grow.
Awesome. And so could you take us along your growth journey? Like you mentioned, it's a fairly young company. You guys started up about 6 months ago. So I'd love to hear about, you know, just how, you know, how long it took you to get it going and what the growth path has looked like since.
Yeah. So we launched in June this year. And I would say we probably, you know, had the concept, Alex came up with the concept way before. We met in January 2019. We really started working on it, I guess 2 summers ago now, thinking about, you know, getting that home recipe down, figuring out the formula, figuring out the branding, the naming, how are we going to go to market, et cetera. All of that, you know, planning was great, but it was in March when we needed to sign like, hey, we're producing. And it was also in March when COVID happened. So a lot of that thinking, you know, had to be rethought, but a lot of our, you know, thinking at the time of, you know, whether we should still do this. And a lot of people were saying like, you know, this is not the time to launch a brand, but we saw at-home drinking, you know, on the rise. We saw a need for like sort of this mission of drink better. You know, people still want to connect, still want to have experiences, still want quality products. They're just doing it in a different way. And so we still thought it appropriate to go to market. So yeah, we launched in June. A lot of our growth, you know, we didn't do sort of like a big VC raise or anything like that. And really thought at the start that our growth was still going to come from, you know, being in spaces where people were convening. So bars, restaurants, et cetera. A lot of that thinking, you know, moved to online. If you go to our website, you can sort of see that you're in a different experience, a different world. But we were thinking about going to market, you know, the way a Red Bull would, like being at certain parties, being in certain spaces, combining sort of different communities that didn't really feel like they belonged together, but when you put them together, magic happens. And so we just tried to translate that to online as quickly as possible, just to make sure people knew that we were sort of like this different standout brand. And a lot of our work has been, a lot of our growth has been through, partnerships, organic word of mouth and things like that. We haven't really tried to like do the big thing yet where we put a bunch of paid dollars behind and grow that way. It's really been more of an experiment. And now that we have sort of a bit of traction, figuring out where we want to put our dollars and spend time growing.
I'm really interested just because when you mentioned the fancy bottle service, like I haven't done a lot of bottle service, but I've been to Vegas a few times, and there's been a few bottle services, and it is a really interesting experience. You're like, oh, I'll have cranberry because it's healthy, helps with my UTI or whatever. But but at the same time, if I was at a club and they rolled out this cool section, selection of these interesting high flavor beverages, like it like I can just see that marketing play being really valuable, and being able to go into clubs and have those types of relationships. So what I'm interested in, what I'm hearing that you're just sort of getting into that mass, into that ability to maybe to spend more heavily into the D2C side. What did that hybrid path look like? Like how were you sort of like hacking that bar experience in order to tell people, to accomplish your goals really?
Yeah, so I think, Avec stands out in the category just in our brand tone and the way we're thinking about storytelling and going to market, and the way we feel even stands out. And so it's something, yes, if you were in the club and you saw this beautiful cart come out, you'd be interested, but also the way we've packaged our things, you're at home and you're interested in exploring and discovering things. And so there's sort of a joy in, having, 5 SKUs to start out with, because you're also playing and discovering the way you would if you were out and having a bit more of an interaction. So we thought about that as we looked at just pure product selection, just making sure there was not like we weren't going after one flavor and being so functional, but making sure there was joy to that exploration. And then 2, like I said, with partnerships, like we are a mixer brand, right? So inherently spirits and, mocktails and other ingredients are important to us, and we can play a different role. And so I think, we've seen a lot of success. We've done a cocktail with House, we've done a cocktail with like Blank Vodka, which is a new brand out of New York. We have done some cocktails with Uncle Nearest, with a whiskey brand, so there's just different worlds that we can play in to bring people together in a way that's different than being in a nightclub. But, if you have a favorite spirit, we can partner with that. Or if you're in this health band, we can partner with that. Or if you're this host, we're sort of this like trick that you can have at home, even if it's a small dinner party. So we've thought about our audience pretty much in those 3 ways, like, the spirit lover, the person who loves hosting parties, social savant, as we call them, loves food and drink, hosting parties, like the flavors get them excited, etc. And then, this health focused person who's like going to the bar and trying to find the healthiest thing that they could mix with or drink with.
Very interesting.
Before you guys, so it's only been 6 months. I'm curious. That's like a ton of a ton of growth in a short time. What's one thing you wish you had known before getting started that you know now?
What's one thing I wish I would have known? Just to have faith in organic. I think you guys do a great job of like all these hacks and growth, and I think the world has just moved to the internet in a way where metrics become everything. But I think it's been refreshing just to like, my background's more in traditional advertising, and I used to work for Vice on the publishing side, but just like, traditional print magazines and all that, like that's what sort of gives me joy. And so I think I would have just loved to know like some comfort in like, not everything has to be measured, and there is some organic way of growing, and then you can sort of add on this thing. But I think it's easy to get caught up in the numbers as soon as you start of like, why don't we have 40,000 Instagram followers on day 1? Like, does that mean we're successful? But if you're having real conversations and like getting real, media pickup, like what's the balance there? So thinking about, I think our brand is one of a lot of contrasts. Like we love numbers, but like we also love this organic thing. We love drinking, but we also want to do it healthily. So I just think thinking about that on the marketing side would have been more comforting, I guess.
I'm curious to know, you said you have dabbled in ads, right? Like you've done some ads. Can you talk a little bit about what your ad strategy has been on the digital side?
Yeah, on the digital side, I think it's really about, again, getting people to experience the product. We are in some ways building a category that is like a bit sleepy or like seen as unsexy, especially in the States, but we think it's incredibly sexy. So garnering interest in the category as a whole. has been, you know, how do you mix with different things? How do you think about a drink that's not like this complex cocktail, but is something super easy to make and has health propositions? So really thinking about just doing more how-tos. And then, you know, with all of our press and PR, really thinking about, you know, social proof, like drinking more than anything. Like you said, if you go to a bar or club, like it's more, you see someone else have that drink. So thinking about that. And then 3, I would think, you know, just like weird experiences. Like it's not to say we've done everything online too. Like we've done some activations at bars and restaurants in New York, for example. We did like a 6 feet apart bar, you know, right at the start of the pandemic when we were still sort of allowed to go outside. And that was a fun activation that got people talking. We've done like a Tarot Tuesday, which is like come down and get, you know, your tarot read in addition to having this, changing what you mix with your spirit, like in a punny way. So just thinking about, you know, weird ways to activate and getting people to experience it rather than always just being like this very functional message at all times.
I love it. And that's built the momentum, like that's built on that base of organic that you're saying. You're just sort of continually putting out, making good connections, bringing good people in, and then people are coming back again and again. I noticed there's no subscribe and save on the option. Is that something that you're considering?
We did add a subscribe and save. Currently we're back ordered, so things are on pre-order. So we don't want to add more subscribers in that time. But yeah, we had an amazing December and January, so our forecast is a bit ahead. But yeah, we will start rolling out subscription, and that's something that people have said they want. You know, we see primarily people coming in and buying our sampler box, and like again having that discovery process, and then depending on what you drink or you know what you use it for, you probably will pick 2 or 3 flavors that you really love and subscribe to those.
One thing I was really taken aback by with your brand and your website is it's very inspired, and it's probably one of the most beautiful sites I've ever seen. Nice. And I'd love to hear a bit about the creative process that you guys went through from the idea, the concept, through to bringing it to life in this way. Yeah, would you be able to go into that a bit for us?
Yeah, for sure. So the name Avec obviously means with in French. As you guys would know, but we wanted a name that was simple, that stood out at the bar. So the whole idea is, you know, you would go to the bar and say, can I have a vodka avec ginger or a vodka avec yuzu lime, insert whatever flavor. So really started with a simple name. And we haven't hired an agency this whole time. So wow. Because of, you know, a network of freelancers we've had, we really believe in like the creative community and again, letting them flex their muscle. So a lot of it is just trusting, finding really smart people to work on creative challenges with you. And I think the brief for the website was, okay, we were a brand that was supposed to go to market, you know, with parties, with experiences, with et cetera. How do you make a site that gets across, you know, the functional benefits of the product of health and ease and, you know, delicious, tasty ingredients and style, but make it feel different and updated. And I think we've always, even before, you know, COVID, sort of took inspiration from like the 1920s. So like that decadence and revelry and joy, but like, how do we mix that with the, like the progressiveness, the grit, sort of like the diversity of today. And so I think thinking about those 2 worlds is what sort of brought us to our site, right? You can kind of see like the scenes are like a 1920s scene, like with that opulence, but it's updated, it feels modern. And so I think it's been a lot of, you know, collaboration with creative and not being too rigid in like, again, these messages, because, you know, we need to convert everything, but how do we create an experience that people, you know, like you said, it's beautiful. It's like you want to be a part of. It's the main headline brief.
How many iterations did it take you to get it to this stage? Like, was this sort of done in one shot, or was how many major iterations?
How many major iterations? I would say we probably had like 5 major iterations, but it took about, you know, people can spend years on a website, and we believe in like just constraining it. It doesn't mean more time doesn't mean you'll get better products. So we probably developed it in like 2 months with our team.
And I love it. I know when you're dealing, you know, with projects that could be sprawling, or, you know, it's easy to think, okay, let's go to a design agency that's going to be this one-stop shop. It's interesting that you instead put it together with your centralized vision and contractors that you sort of let run wild a little bit, or really let flex their creativity.
Yeah, and I think just like diversity of thought, right? Alex is a British guy. I'm an American girl. Our creatives are in Brooklyn, come from different backgrounds, and it's like just making sure that diversity of thought is reflected. You kind of get to more fun places. Like one of our core things has been like diversity leads to better results. You know, saving fun, like all the sort of joy that comes with mixing literally. And so I think that's always been our MO, not to just necessarily go with the grain and like, okay, this is the hotshot design agency. Sometimes you don't, you get the same sort of work. I can kind of point at different agencies' work. I'm like, oh, that came from this agency, that came from this, pretty quickly. And so if you want something fresh, you kind of have to try fresh inputs and fresh thinking.
Good advice.
You have a couple of experiences that I find really interesting. As someone who grew up, watching Mad Men, I became quite taken with David Ogilvy and stuff. And you actually worked at Ogilvy, so I'm curious about that. I also had these delusions of grandeur. I thought I'd do an MBA, maybe I'd go to Harvard or something like that. And you did your MBA at Columbia, and so I'm really curious about what practical applications you took away from each one of those experiences that really have stood the test of time and had an impact.
Yeah, I used to say this in investor meetings, but I don't think it flew well. But when Alex came with the idea, I was like, that idea is so stupidly simple. It's perfect. And I think that's one of David Ogilvy's, I don't remember the exact quote, but it's like, if an idea is really simple, it's actually a great idea. Like, not adding all the bells and whistles to things doesn't make it a better idea. And so I think that's like the first premise. Ogilvy was my first job, and we kind of call it like the training hospital for advertising. And like, that's what they drone through your head. If it takes more than 10 seconds to explain, it's not a good idea, right? So I think that's sort of been the thing that has kept us going, and like the thing that inspired me to join Alex on this journey. When it comes to MBA, I would say, it's a very expensive confidence boost is how I phrase it up. But having spent 10 years in advertising, I think it's important to know the sides of business you don't know, and at least know the right questions to ask. By no way am I like a financial modeling expert or financial expert, but at least taking those courses let me know what I don't know.
You can read a balance sheet, I bet, which is something, I come from this world of like upstart, originally, affiliates and drop shippers and people just sort of like figuring out how to make money online. And a lot of the structured ways of thinking about building businesses. And I can even just hear the way you talk about your business a little bit, that you have some of the scaffolding that these people who start businesses, right away, these low barriers to entry may not have, and they have to kind of learn on the fly. So I imagine that would be one of the benefits.
Yeah.
Expensive, but.
Yeah, it's an expensive scaffold for sure. But I think it does give you the structure, and it does give you the inputs. And I think you just have to, I think the thing that advertising gives you in contrast is like, how do you stay creative even if you have the structure, right? Like, you don't want to become, nothing wrong with consulting, but you don't want to be in this like consulting framework constantly, or like this, accounting framework constantly. It's like, how do you take the frameworks and then adapt it to like what's happening today? Because every situation is going to be different. And I think like, just looking at, why you guys are so great, right? It's a bunch of case studies, just looking at what other people do and having, intellectual banter with people in a room about whether that was a good idea or a bad idea. And you sort of realize there's never really a perfect answer. Like, even in the Mad Men world, like, oh, this is your creative solution. And like, there's probably 5 other agencies pitching that they don't show, crying about the perfect creative solution that would have worked too. So just trying to see different angles at all times.
And the multiplicity of voices, as you say, which I think is a really interesting point as well. Like, it's such a diverse, global audience at this point for so many things, that making sure that those inputs are reflected on your team and how you do things.
Those conversations are not easy, right? Like, that's why people sort of avoid them, because they don't want to have them. They're awkward, whatever. And I think just like forcing the conversation gets you to a better place. Like, why don't you like this word? It comes down to sometimes just like word choices. Like, why does this word mean something different to you?
Yeah.
And let's get into it. And like, it seems like a waste of time at the time, but I think advertising also gives you the discipline to like put up with those conversations, not put up, but like, spend time on those conversations, work through them, to get to like a better place. Even if it feels at the end, you get to the same place.
What are your goals for 2021? So I know it sounds like you're back ordered right now using the pre-order strategy, which is something we always talk about with all of our advertisers, which is sweet to see. But what are your goals with Avec Drinks in 2021?
Yeah, our goal, is really to take the learning, the experimentation we had and grow that. So, we anticipate that, 2/3 of our business will be online, but we are growing in specialty grocers and sort of smaller discovery stores. But I think the biggest goal for us is really like building that community around the brand and knowing what people want, right? So, from the consumer side, a a lot of bar brands or like spirit brands and mixer brands will start with the bartender, right? And start with like influencing that community. So we think it's important to like really start with like, you know, the at-home bartender or, you know, people just drinking together and getting ideas from them. So really building out our audience in more ways, like obviously purchase and revenue and all of that. But to us, it's, you know, how do we grow like a community around a Bec? And for some people, we don't make sense and we're totally fine with that. Like some people want sugary cocktails and we're cool with that too. So just like finding better ways of messaging, getting our messaging across, because as you guys can probably tell, it's a very, you know, there's so many angles to come into a Bec. So tightening that, you know, getting a tighter audience and really growing from there.
Before I have a super, how's your cocktail and spirit knowledge?
Probably less than Alex, so don't test me.
Okay. What's your favorite cocktail? What's your favorite classic cocktail?
Probably a French 75 or a Negroni. It depends on the mood.
Negroni is my desert island drink as well.
Really? Yeah. It gives you bad hangovers when you're old, but it is
a lot of sugar.
Yeah. What about your drinks? Well, like I assume with drinks, we're stuck in Canada here. We can't get these beverages across the border. You know, we're finding that with a few of our different people that we have on. But what would you recommend would be like the go-to drink on a tough day that you reach for? I guess variety is the spice of life, but what's the first one you reach for?
I would say there are two probably. Our jalapeno blood orange with a mezcal, because I'm just getting into mezcals and all the range there. And then I would say our ginger just reminds me of, you know, a fresh ginger beer, but it has this like pineapple twist to it that makes it feel like you're maybe having a rum punch or a more interesting Moscow Mule or a more interesting whiskey. I just love our ginger with lots of different things. And then yuzu lime when I'm really trying to be skinny. That's like my go-to. Like that's been my January, like, okay, I have to work out and drink.
Gut check time. On quarantine. I know the feeling well. I wanted just to get a little more on the ad side. So I love this, you know, we always advocate, you know, the organic, you know, channels in your business have to be there in order to feed paid and you know, and things like that. And it's honestly the smartest way to build a business, a stable business that isn't as reliant on algorithms and iOS 14 updates and all these things. But I'm curious about your actual your ad plans in 2021. Are you gonna double down? Are you gonna invest more in Facebook ads or Google ads?
Yeah, we're definitely going to invest more. I think search is an interesting opportunity for us because there's just a lot of intentional search around cocktails, making things at home, hosting, that sort of lifestyle. And I think opening up the scope of our strategy to more of this, like, you know, social savant lifestyle. So we know that people who love food and drink, sort of, you know, we were in food and wine this month, but like that sort of lifestyle, that kind of reader, how do we target them, you know, across the internet, not just necessarily Facebook and Instagram, but where they're getting recipes, right? So we're looking at interesting things like maybe on Pinterest or where they're getting tutorials, like even, you know, the small sort of 30-second TikTok tutorials, whether or not we launch a TikTok or take that format and think about how we do these quick teachable things. But I think making ads useful, right? And not just like this functional, you know, this like, okay, splash, it pops up on your Facebook and disappears. But like, I think just thinking about how do we make our ads more useful and like entertaining.
KG can speak to that. I've seen his ads. He's created ads in this vein specifically that are like highly educational cocktail ads for his cocktail training business.
Yes, that's true. It's very challenging because we have a bartending school that's local. So, you know, I checked one of our ads a couple months ago, and our frequency was like 19. Is really bad. But yeah, what's that?
They're all me. I see it every day. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I feel like it's a bit of a separate conversation, but yeah, I think there is a lot of low hanging fruit in just telling people about, you know, about the ingredients that go into cocktails and how much rich history there is in you know, in gin, in mezcal, and like it's just once you dive into the regionality of these spirits, it's insane. You know, like if you go to Oaxaca where mezcal is made, you know, there are still you know, men taking donkeys around to crush the piñas of the agave. You know, it's crazy. And a lot of it hasn't, in many parts of the world, it hasn't changed. It hasn't it's just, there's something timeless about it and beautiful. So anyways, that was a bit of a digression, but there's
so many cool people. I mean, you said cocktail history and I was like, maybe I don't know, but maybe I do know enough. But just like, there's just so many cool people behind, the old school sort of like cocktail books, right? Like, we were even doing research for Black History Month and looking up the ideal bartender and like, the sort of book from back in the day, and people that are not recognized necessarily. Like a lot of people don't know that book. Like they should know that book. It's an interesting story. So there's so many stories around drinking, and like that's sort of why we started the business, is to create more of those stories in the future. So if you can tell the past ones, the future ones, like just that dance, I think.
Yeah, I have a partner who says to know the history of alcohol is to know the history of people, and yeah, so it's I mean, there's so many like Jerry Thomas, who's Jerry Thomas, the first ever like highly celebrated bartender. When he was around, he made as much money as the vice president of the United States. That's that sort of thing. Super cool. But we have a question from Robin here in terms, we've talked a little bit about activation, but I'd also be curious about and I want to be conscious of time here, about how you launch products. And when you do go to launch your products, is it a single product? I know you probably haven't had many launches, but is it all products at once? Do you leverage a community? Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's something we're thinking about. We haven't launched a new product yet. We sort of launched our, like I said, that range of 5, and that was really going after sort of existing cocktails, but we have desires to make plenty more. And we're also thinking about, additional functional things, caffeine, et cetera, that people want when they're drinking. So I think we're thinking about 2 things. One is, replacing or being an update to the things that people want. So like, do you go after that ginger beer consumer with more ginger variety? Or, also looking at spirit lovers, like this pairs perfectly with that Mezcal Explorer, right? Like here's a Mezcal bundle. So thinking about the way people drink, I think, is how we're thinking about, product strategy, just like where people would pair it with. And then also thinking about format and innovation in format. So the bar might need a different format than an 8-ounce can probably, because they're doing more serves. And so we're thinking about, as the world opens up, what does a Avec look like? Like what shape and packaging does that look like?
Cool. Awesome. And we have one pro forma question that we love to ask as appropriate. It is if the Canadian government decides to, we need to start sponsoring American drinks with French names. So the Canadian government is going to give you $50K USD, just strings free. What aspect of your business do you put it in over the next 6 months or over the next month?
In the next month, we'd probably definitely put it into audience development, community development, and growth. So really we're really working on our content right now and making sure that's, best in class and delivering on what people want. And then again, that product development, as a new brand, you're always sort of thinking about how you can improve product and change format and all of that. So we're investing some money in that right now. But if we could sort of, 5 times that money, that would be ideal. So tell the Canadian government to hit us up.
Okay, well, and what's the hot new flavor? Like, what's the new, like, ouzo? Like, as soon as you said ouzo lemon, I'm like, ooh, that, I could see that on the streets. People are going to love that in New York. Yeah. Like, what's the what are some of the hot new flavor profiles emerging?
We can't say because then we wear trade secrets.
Proprietary.
They're proprietary secrets. But yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on seasonality. Like, I think people's palates change based on season. For some reason, the jalapeno blood orange, I feel like people just love for like the challenge of like, can I handle the spice? But we've really thought about the ingredients as like a pair. So it's something that it's something you don't know that well, right? So like a yuzu, you don't know that well, but a lime, or grapefruit, well, but you probably don't know about the pomelo, which is basically a bigger grapefruit. So like trying to have some of that combination is what we always think about. Something and something you don't.
Awesome. Great final insight there. Any final words, KG?
No, I just think it's an awesome product. Based on, I haven't tasted it, but I can't wait to see what you guys do. I can tell, a lot of creativity, a lot of inspiration, and I'm stoked. It's fun stuff.
Awesome. I want to thank you, Dee, for coming on the D2C podcast. And if you want to get in touch with Dee, find her at Avec Drinks. anything, yeah, whatever you're comfortable with there. And yeah, I'm super excited to follow your growth as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Follow us at Avec Drinks. It goes to Alex or I. There's only 2 of us at the moment. So
okay.
Appreciate the feedback and the time. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, D.
Thanks, D.